Good evening, class. This evening I'm suffering from COVID, so if my voice sounds a little off, please forgive me. Yesterday I kind of sounded like Barry White, so it's getting better. For my research project, I examined the Catholic settlement of Virginia. I did this for a number of reasons. First, one of the main characters, Giles Brent, is an ancestor of mine, and the property he and his family would come to own includes the land my house sits on. Second, I find the circumstances of the settlement fascinating. There was likely no better time for a settlement of Catholics to be established than when the Brents did so. Third, while I'm a Baptist, not a Catholic, I appreciate the fact that the freedoms they sought were not so different from the ones that Baptists of that era would have sought. Giles Brent came from a noble family based at the Larkstone Manor in Gloucestershire, England, in southwest England. He was born around 1606 to Richard Brent, the Lord Admington and Lord Stoke, and Lady Elizabeth Reed, the daughter of Edward Giles, the Lord of Tusbury and Witten Reed. He descended from King Henry II, Charlemagne, King Duncan of Scotland, and others. So he's a well-connected guy, but he's the youngest of 13, which meant he wasn't getting anything. So around this time, Jamestown had been settled, and in 1625, Giles sailed there, but he returned just a couple of years later. The exact year is unknown. Importantly, in his family, which had been Anglican, they saw the conversion of Giles' sister Catherine to Catholicism, and then she moved to Belgium. And then this brought the whole family then under scrutiny at a time when England was embroiled in political and religious turmoil. Soon, two more sisters joined her, Mary and Margaret, and then Giles, all converted to Catholicism. And all of them would sail to St. Mary's, Maryland, arriving there at St. Mary's City on the 22nd of November, 1638. They were connected from back in England to the governing Calvert family. You might know them as the Lord Baltimore. The Brents established themselves in the colony and received large land tracts, being a well-connected family. Margaret Brent and her sisters each received 800 acres per sister. Giles himself received 1,000 acres on Kent Island, and Margaret then allied herself with the governor, Lord Calvert, and they became the guardians of Mary Kittamacund, who was the 7-year-old daughter of the Piscataway Indian chief. That's important because in 1644, Giles marries Mary Kittamacund, which would ultimately secure for the Brent family the rights to the vast Piscataway territory. That wouldn't happen until Giles' son, Giles Jr., would be born. In 1645, the English Civil War reached the colonies, and a Captain Richard Ingle, the Protestant and parliamentary commander of the attacking fleet, raided the colony. Governor Calvert, who was a staunch royalist, as was the Brent family, secured assistance to repel the invasion from Virginia's royalist government. Unfortunately, he would die before he could pay the troops who stayed there demanding payment. On his deathbed, he instructed Margaret Brent to be the executor of his will, sell all that he had, pay the debt, including the pay for the soldiers. Meanwhile, back in England, Lord Baltimore, Leonard Calvert's brother, was livid that Margaret had sold his brother's belongings and proceeded to expel her and her family from Maryland. And this is where things really get interesting. In 1647, Giles Brent, the one-time governor of Maryland at a time when all of this was taking place, when the Ingalls invasion was taking place, Giles was governor. He was the commanding officer of all the colonial militia in Maryland, and he was forced to flee. So he, along with his wife Mary and his sisters Margaret and Mary, crossed the Potomac into what was then Northumberland County. It's today Stafford County. At the time, there was no clearly defined border between Maryland and Virginia. The Brents would ultimately force the creation of that border. Between 1647 and 1650, just as Oliver Cromwell's Commonwealth was getting established, they settled on Chapawamsek Island, which is right across from the current Marine Corps Air Facility Quantico, and then later moved on to the mainland at Aquia Creek. In doing so, they established, with the blessing of the colonial government in Virginia, the first English Roman Catholic settlement in Virginia. Together they founded two plantations called Peace and Retirement on the north side of the Aquia Creek. The Brent holdings would grow to 15,000 acres in northern Virginia, which would include the present-day Old Town Alexandria, Mount Vernon, and Fredericksburg. Meanwhile, in Europe, Charles II, in 1649, then a man without a kingdom because his brother had been executed and Oliver Cromwell was in charge, awarded the Culpeper and Fairfax families a propriety which included the Brent tracts. Of course, no one paid attention to that until 1688, when King James II issued a new land grant. And from that land grant, Lord Fairfax ended up getting all of it, and the large county bearing his name still exists today. The Brent family would grow to prominence, and their nephew, George Brent, represented Stafford County in the House of Burgesses in 1688, the only Roman Catholic delegate ever in the House of Burgesses in the colonial period. He would become a law partner with George Mason, and the two families were closely tied for many years. The Catholics didn't particularly thrive in Northern Virginia until the 20th century, but the rights that they secured, seemingly against all odds, stand as a testimony to their courage and helped pave the way for the liberties that we enjoy today. I hope you all have a good evening and enjoy finishing up your papers. Thank you.